How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number 877-973-7425. Can I ask you to do me a favor? I saved this shameless self-promotion for the end. We're growing the YouTube channel, putting up clips and stuff. If you go to youtube.com/EW Erickson or just text Eric to 33777, the link is there. Follow me on YouTube, please. We're on Rumble, too. We're trying to grow YouTube as more conservatives walk away from YouTube. A lot of them, they're walking away. It's not they're being pushed out the door. I just think there needs to be a conservative presence there. If you will subscribe to our YouTube page, whether you're a regular user or not, it helps. Instagram, too, because that's where all the fun stuff is. Did you know there are parts of the country now where it's not safe for Democrats to run? Now, side note. In my area of Middle Georgia, there is a special election for the state Senate. I mentioned this the other day. One of the guys who is running is being beaten up for having voted in Democratic primaries. Your host has voted in Democratic primaries. And for many of you who live in the South, it is something you understand, that at the local level, people still vote Democrat, even though at the national level they vote Republican. And if you're in a state like mine where statewide elections are in non-presidential years, you tend to vote in Democratic primaries because the sheriff and the district attorney in a lot of places are going to be picked in the Democratic primary. And so you have to jump in to save the reasonable person from the insane Democrats. And when you're in the South and you're attacking Republicans for having voted in Democratic primaries, it's kind of nuts. A lot of local officials in the state, they're nonpartisan races, and they can have the veneer of saying they're not. Like my local mayor in my area is a huge Democrat, always has been, but claims to be nonpartisan because his race is nonpartisan, but he's not. Everybody knows he's a Democrat. There are places, if you're a Republican in these areas, you have to vote Democrat. Or take New York City, for example. Had this conversation with Tim Keller when he was alive, that in New York City is 75% Democrat. If you're a Republican, you're not going to get elected to anything. So if you're a Republican in New York and you want to keep the far left pro-abortion Democrats out or minimize their reach, you got to vote in a Democratic primary, whether you want to or not. And hopefully pull all your resources with all your other Republican friends voting Democrat to stop the really crazy wackadoo. And it failed this time. Mamdani got elected in the Democratic primary in large part because a lot of people who consider themselves Republicans decided they were going to vote for Eric Adams as an independent or some such. And so you got Mamdani. Well, Charlie, my call screening producer, is from Montana. And he sent me this link from the Montana Free Press. Seth Bodnar is the president of the University of Montana. He is a Democrat. He is a well-known Democrat. He is a liberal Democrat. And he is running as an independent for the United States Senate. And he's backed by Senator John Tester, the ousted senator from Montana. And it's making Democrats mad that Bodnar has decided to run as an independent. Rumors of the move swirled through Democratic circles last week as it appeared that Tester intended not to support a Democratic challenger to two-term Republican Senator Steve Daines, who played a heavy role in unseating Tester in 2024. The Republican has never had a close race for federal office. Democrats Riley Neal, Former state legislator from Livingston and Air Force veteran Alani Bankhead have registered Senate campaigns with the FEC. A text message allegedly sent by Tester, who did not return multiple phone calls from the Montana Free Press, stated not only that a Democrat cannot win the race, but that the party's brand has become a drag on his last two elections. Quote, every race I ran as Montana senator and U.S. senator it was about distancing myself from the Democratic Party. During my last two races, the Democratic Party was poisoned in my attempts to get reelected. The message ended with a declaration that Neil, the Democrat, would lose badly. Several people had forwarded copies of the text to the Free Press, but no one could confirm Tester as the source. The phone number from which the text was originally sent had been removed from the circulated message, which was signed with the initials JT. Todd Buchanan, chair of the Montana Board of Regents, which oversees State University, said in an email Thursday he heard nothing about a Bodner Senate race. Buchanan's father, Gary, was an independent candidate from Montana's Eastern U.S. House District in 2022. In that race, won by Republican Matt Rosendale in a blowout, Buchanan received 21.8% of the vote, slightly better than the Democrat Penny Roning's 20%. Now, there are parts of the country, California is a great example of this. In California, Republicans are not going to win statewide races. I get really frustrated with the people who are so rock rib partisan that they can't do the math. Because at the end of the day, a lot of politics is math. Side note, pause, tangent, all of those things at one time. I regret that you all are going to have to hear this, but I have to do this. I have to signal to my team at this moment something because I know what's going to happen otherwise. Philip, if you text me about writing a book on running for office and how to win while I'm talking about this, I'm going to fire you. Okay, back to you guys. He's in the other room. He heard me. So it's about math. Here's what you have to do. You have precincts, and in each precinct there are voters, and voters tend to be Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Some turn out in primaries and some don't. The people who don't turn out in primaries but still vote in general elections can be persuaded to vote for a Republican or a Democrat or an Independent. You have to figure out how to get them. There's a mathematical formula you do, and it's not that hard of a formula to figure out, but every year you have a population change in your precinct. The numbers go up, the numbers go down, and you adjust that for the coming year. And then you figure out, can someone win this race? And what you find in many cases, in many places, is that you have a Republican who jumps into a race against a famous Democrat and decides, I'm going to win this election. No, you're not. Why? Because the district is 75% Democrat. It frustrates me so much when I get people who call the show or email me and say, hey, why aren't you willing to support so-and-so and have them on your show? And my answer is respectfully, I do mean it respectfully, this person's not going to win, and I don't want to encourage my listeners to fund a losing campaign. And they always, inevitably, 100% get mad, and then guess what happens? The person loses. Why? Because districts in this country go through something called gerrymandering more often than not, and there are districts that are drawn for Republicans to win, and there are districts drawn for Democrats to win, and occasionally, we hit upon a rare swing district. And inevitably, what happens is some Republican and some Democrat who are wackadoo fringe decide that they're going to get into that race and sabotage it for everyone else in their party because they're either too far right or they're too far left, and they've looked in the mirror and said, doggone it, I'm good enough, sharp enough, and smart enough to win this race, and then they go out and they screw it up for everybody. Y'all all know I'm right on this. You may not like my bluntness. You may wish I was a little more diplomatic, but this frustrates me to no end. I get people all the time who say, you know what, doggone it, I'm going to run for Congress. These clowns are all a joke. And I'm like, nobody knows who the hell you are. You don't know how to run for office. You've got no background in this. People need to be surrounded with friends who love them enough to tell them you're an idiot. You know, when I ran campaigns, I would make candidates get in a room with their best friends and their wives and make everybody tell them every bad thing about them. Why? Because you need to know you're not all that and your poop does stink. There are parts of the country where you're not going to win. What is notable is that in Montana, since John Tester lost, and John Tester was a reliable progressive vote for the Democrats until election time, and this is what they all do. I mean, it's what John Ossoff does in Georgia. He's a reliable progressive vote, and then election year comes, and he knows people have the memories of goldfish, and so he starts sounding a little more conservative on the campaign trail and occasionally throws a vote towards some Republican issue that doesn't really matter much, and he can say, look, I sided with the Republicans. I am reasonable, and I am above party. No, you're not. You're a progressive hack until election year. Same with John Tester. And Tim Sheehy ran a competent, credible campaign against Tester. Steve Daines was the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, was very data-based in his drive, and was able to find good candidates around the nation and got the Republicans the United States Senate back. So along comes John Tester, who says Democrats can't win in Montana. And John Tester is right, and the Democrats are upset about it. Now, here's what you need to know about Montana, too. It's more populist than it is conservative. It actually is a state where Democrats can win on populist issues, but more and more it's a state where the label Democrat doesn't work. Now, this is something notable for Republicans around the country as well. There are going to be places in the country this year where Republicans get eaten alive because they have an R next to their name. Republicans in Georgia, don't doubt me on this, some of you are going to have problems because you have an R next to your name, because they associate the R with Trump. But as I mentioned earlier in the program, Trump goes away in 3 years. The Democratic crazy does not. The Democratic crazy funds the donor class, and the donor class supports the Democratic candidates, and they're all a bunch of nuts. Yeah, the Republicans have their problems with nuts and anti-Semites, but the anti-Semitism and the nut jobbery on the Democratic side has been institutionalized. They can't tell you if men can get pregnant, and they all hate the Jews. Institutionally, Democrats hate Jews these days. With Republicans, it's Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, neither of whom were elected. With the Democrats, it's Ilhan Omar, Elena Presley, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Squad, and Zohran Mamdani. Elected leadership. You've got to understand your people. And now this gets back to Montana directly. So Seth Bodnar, he's a pretty photogenic guy. He looks like he could play the part of a United States senator. He's the president of the University of Montana. He's big on the Grizzlies. A lot of Montanans go to the University of Montana. And he's active in the Montana National Guard. He went to the University of Oxford. He went to West Point. He's got a compelling biography. He could win, except, of course, he's playing the part of progressive. And the question's going to be, same with him, when they start asking him, can men become women? Can boys become girls? See, he's going to have to do something Steve Daines doesn't do. Daines, by the way, is one of my favorite senators. I like the guy. He's a phenomenal guy. We're in the same denomination, theological worldview. Super guy. Was in business before he got into the Senate. He's a data guy. Very, very great guy. And he's going to have all the Republicans together. And this guy, Bodnar, not only will he now be identified as a partisan, even though he claims he's going to be running as an independent, he's going to split with the Democrats. Are Democrats really going to vote for an independent or a Democrat? And a lot of people, they like Steve Daines. He's not a controversial guy. He's kind of low-key. He's a great family man. He's a great dad. He's a great senator. He provides for the people of Montana. He's seen a lot. Bodnar is going to suddenly no longer be the leader of the Grizzlies. He's going to become a partisan. And there will be people who like him today who don't like him tomorrow. The question is he going to be able to handle that? He's an academic. Academics don't like to be unloved. But it's a damning indictment for the Democrats in Missouri, in Montana, rather, that they're at the point where their former senator, who they continue to get elected well past the time he should have been able to be elected, is saying Democrats can't win here anymore. And instead of actually deciding, you know what, we're going to run undercover as independents, the Democratic Party is saying, by God, we're not. We're going to be loud and proud and Steve Daines is going to get reelected. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number 877-973-7425. My goodness gracious. Laura Loomer is just going on a tirade about J.D. Vance right now. So here's the thing. I don't know that people really appreciate that right now. The conversation's already happening behind closed doors on what comes next because Donald Trump is term limited. He made that joke about maybe we shouldn't have elections in 2026, and the left went nuts again. Oh, he's canceling the elections, whatever. No, he's not. He was making a joke. Calm down. He's term limited. He's gone after 2028. What comes next? I mean, if I had to put my money on it, I'd say J.D. Vance would be the Republican nominee. I don't know who the Democrats would go to. I still don't think it's going to be Gavin Newsom. But what's so wild about the whole thing is that a lot of people are so stuck on everything's about Trump. They don't really understand the undercurrents are happening right now behind the scenes, as there are some people who really don't want Vance. They think he's a Democrat and an isolationist. They don't like his direction. You got the pro-lifers are angry right now with the Trump administration. You got the Rubio wing rising. The isolationists hate him. The neocons like him. The Trump supporters tend to be divided. Loomer has played an impressive role in ousting people from the administration. I saw in column earlier today that people are suggesting she has been ousting China hawks. I think they're trying to undermine her. The infighting is destabilizing within the ranks of the Republican Party right now as MAGA repositions itself. Donald Trump will leave. And not only that, I mean, Donald Trump's the ultimate term limit is the Grim Reaper, and he's 80 years old. You will see a realignment of the Republican Party. The point I keep making to Democrats, though, who keep salivating over all this, is that you can say Donald Trump is a destabilizing crazy force, but he's going away. The trans movement shows no signs of letting up. The anti-Semites of the Democratic Party show no sign of letting up. The crazy people in the Democratic Party show no signs of going away. The crazies on the right are going to be discombobulated, realign with each other, pick different factions. The crazies on the left are all uniformly led by a donor class that is deeply out of touch with the American people. And that's ultimately the problem for the Democrats, who can have a really good year in 2026 and then interpret that as we don't need to change anything and go into 2028 and get blown out of the water. Why? Because they're nuts. When you can't say men can't have babies without getting crucified by the left, and you are Gavin Newsom and cannot answer the question of boys becoming girls that Ben Shapiro asked, you got real problems on the Democratic Party side that are going to last way longer than the problems of Donald Trump. The festering of the Democratic Party is just going to get a little crazy. So it's an interesting thing to watch. When we come back, there's still a lot more we got to talk about today. A ton of stuff, including warning signs at American banks right now of some rapid destabilization in the ranks of America's major banks and economic woes. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Don't forget, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the show notes, live stream, subscribe to YouTube, please. We're trying to grow YouTube. I got to tell you, I'm so frustrated with YouTube. I guess I'm going to have to buy one of those subscriptions so I stop seeing the ads, because I'm so tired of seeing the ads on like getting interrupted. I was trying to watch directions the other day for what it was. It was some cooking recipe. I guess that's redundant. It was some recipe I was watching. And like every 3 minutes there was an ad. I was like, come on, please stop. And I know they're just luring me in to try to pony up for one of those subscriptions. And I guess I'm going to have to. In any event, okay, we got to move on to other stuff, because there actually is some stuff out there, including there's this story. It caught my eye in the New York Times. It actually caught my eye yesterday, and I was going to talk about it. It might be a little esoteric. And then Philip put it in the stack of stuff, and I'm like, okay, it's in the show notes. Here we go. For a year, Wall Street's dominant theme has been the so-called K-shaped economy, in which the well-to-do have powered financial activity despite lower earner struggles. This week, the nation's largest banks reported a broadly disappointing set of quarterly earnings. The first stumble after a year-long spree of rising markets and softening regulations paid off handsomely for the finance set. The results at Bank of America, Citi, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo all fell short of expectations, and their shares fell. Troubles ranged from delayed merger deals, JP Morgan, to stubborn expenses at Citi, to questions about the efficacy of artificial intelligence tools, Bank of America. Banks that do business largely with rich individuals and corporations, such as Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, fared comparatively better. Results from major lenders are closely watched because they contain hints about the state of the economy and ordinary American consumers. Wells Fargo's chief executive, Charles Scharf, said his organization has not seen a meaningful shift among the consumer data it collected, including checking account flows, direct deposit amounts, overdraft activities, and payments. Another Wells Fargo executive said it was consistent activity. Wells Fargo's quarterly results disappointed for a different reason, lower than expected profits, in part because mortgage lending stayed weak in a slow housing market. Now, I can stop there and say, we actually last month, more houses were sold last month than at any period since 2022. Mortgage rates have started going down, and people are starting to realize that there are houses available out there. Here's the problem, though. There is this sense among young people that is starting to head into the job market that life was more fair for their parents. We've talked about this before, and I don't want to beat a dead horse over this story, but yet again, there are more young voters who are complaining that life is just not fair. They cannot get ahead. They cannot buy a house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You should know Kevin Hassett is saying the president in Davos, yep, they're going to Davos, and they're going to announce a plan that individuals, new homeowners for their first home, will be able to take money out of a 401k and use it as a down payment on a house without tax consequences. Interestingly enough, my buddy David Bonson, who should be like Treasury Secretary or something, he's a genius. He was pointing out that if the president wants to actually have a meaningful impact on the economy, it's do something President Trump long advocated for in the past, which is to index capital gains to inflation. A lot of people selling a house, it's too burdensome. The tax accounting and everything else is a problem. So if you adjust it to inflation, suddenly you free up a lot of capital in the economy. There are some really good ideas out there, and that's one of the better ones. Why? So for those of you who don't know, I may get this wrong, and David, I apologize. I'm going to blame you because you put this idea in my head, and it actually is a good one, and it's one the president himself in the private sector advocated for. But so let me explain this one to you. I buy a house for $100,000, and 10 years later, I sell the house for $500,000. 500,000 minus 100,000 equals 400,000. Now I got to pay 20% taxes on the 400,000, so I got to pay, what is that, $80,000? I'm trying to do the math in my head. Y'all know I went to law school. I'm not good at it. What Bonson and others, and what Donald Trump himself, when he was a real estate developer before he even got into politics, argued, is that you should index capital gains for inflation. So I bought my house at $100,000, and I sold my house for $500,000. But due to inflation, my house is actually worth $300,000 based on the $100,000 sales price from however many years ago. You do the inflation calculation of inflation going up over time. The $100,000 became worth $300,000, so I really didn't make a $400,000 profit. I made a $200,000 profit. And I have to pay $40,000 in tax, not $80,000 in tax. Y'all, that's a really good idea. And a lot of people are hoping the president and the GOP embrace this idea in another reconciliation package, because what would happen? There are a lot of people who are looking at whether it's land or stock, and they're like, I can't sell this right now. The tax bill would be so ridiculously high, I might as well hold on to it for a while longer, at least until I die, and then let my heirs deal with it. If you inflate this stuff, if you add inflation to capital gains, suddenly your tax bill goes down. So I bought my house for $100,000. I sell it for $500,000. The technical profit is $400,000 off of it, but really the inflation of the $100,000 went up to $300,000. So really, I'm got $400,000 in cash, but I'm only paying profit on. I'm only considering taxes on the $200,000. That's a really good deal. And you would have a lot more people selling. Here's what would happen is, even though you would get less in taxes per sale, there would be so many sales, you'd wind up with a lot more revenue. It's a great way to flood the treasury with money, stimulate the economy, and open the housing market to other people. Banks right now, the big banks, JP Morgan, Citi, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they're having some problems. And the problems come not from the super wealthy, but from the middle class. And you have young people who are saying, I can't get into the housing market. And the problem is, when you start talking to the young people think they should be able to walk into a $300,000, $400,000 house. And a lot of first-time home buyers are doing $300,000 and $400,000 houses. But part of the problem, too, is the young people don't want to make sacrifices. They don't want the small house. They simply don't want a small house. And that is a problem. There are houses available right now, older houses, some of them with land, but people don't want to buy the older houses. They don't want to fix them up. They don't know how to fix them up. I'm looking online right now in my local area. There's a house for $156,000 on an acre of lot, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, but it's definitely old and run down and needs some love, and people don't want to do that. See, another house is 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. It's $329,000, but it's been renovated and on 5 acres of land. When my wife and I bought our first house, it was a house built in the 1952. This was the year 2000. Very old house, still had a fuse box. And we never really had the money to put a lot into it to renovate it. We did some renovation to it over time, and finally moved into a bigger, newer house later. But a lot of people just think that, well, my parents didn't have to sacrifice, and now I'm having to sacrifice too much, and this is unfair. And truth be told, they just don't know about their parents' sacrifice. And a lot of kids don't want to do that. And, you know, one of the other things, and I've been pushing my kids on this one, is the work ethic. Let's go back to the Raytheon guy. Raytheon, one of the executives of Raytheon, is saying one of the problems they're having with weapons manufacturing is that they have a large number of jobs available, and they can't find American kids with engineering backgrounds who want these jobs. That American kids who are doing engineering, they don't want to go into weapons development. They want to go into other things. They also, a lot of it involves training at the beginning, so you're not starting out with a massive salary, but your salary potential grows very rapidly. It's not like the Ford job where it takes you 5 to 10 years. This is a 2 to 3 years, you're in 6 figures, but you're not starting out at 6 figures. I didn't start out at 6 figures in the year 2000. Most people don't start out at 6 figures, but there are a lot of people now who think that you do start out at 6 figures, and it's not true. The expectations game has been blown through the door. One of the reasons I'm actually very thankful for the school that my kids go to, it's a small classical Christian school, and they go through, essentially they put them through the Dave Ramsey program their senior year, and they get explained that life's not fair, and you're not going to start out with a big salary, and you're going to need to learn to save and not go into debt, and you need to avoid credit cards. And again, life's not fair. A very heavy emphasis on the fact that life's not fair, and that there will be hard choices you have to make, and you can't rely on your parents. I saw a story today that the permanent son, forget exactly how it was, but basically we've now reached a point where many families who have sons, the sons are never leaving the houses. They're getting jobs. They're having careers. They're not getting married. They're leaving houses. Side note, I think about my daughter is 20 years old. She's never really been in a relationship, but I'm kind of glad about that, actually. But now I'm starting to think at some point you gotta learn to date and you gotta have relationships with other people. And she's going to England for 5 months. This is kind of psychological, I guess, because I had a nightmare the other night that she came home with a British husband. I should not be telling you guys this. Literally woke up in a cold sweat the other night. I had this dream that my kid came home with her husband who was British. And he had bad teeth. Should not be telling this on radio. Erickson, shut up. But seriously, you've got to get your kids to recognize that they're not going to start out in some lavish way, that they will grow to a lifestyle. And it's notable that so many employers and a lot of the banks out there right now are all signaling that we have an expectations problem with Gen Z and Gen Alpha right now, where they just presume that they're going to walk into their parents' lifestyle and they're not. And that these kids cannot comprehend it. And when you try to explain it to them, they get very, very angry that they shouldn't have to settle, or actually their parents had it better than them. Or, well, the one that I hear all the time is, well, things are supposed to improve. Yes, things are supposed to improve. Guess what? Your $75,000 or $50,000 starting salary today would have been $25,000 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it did improve. You just can't appreciate it. And then a lot of kids, they don't want real college degrees anymore. Like my oldest is getting a degree in finance and accounting. My youngest has only ever wanted to be an architect. I have a friend of mine whose kid is getting one of those diversity degrees. The parents are kind of upset about it, but the kid got a scholarship and I forget what it is. It's not like women. It's like a women and gender studies class, but it's like an interdisciplinary degree, I think is what they call it. And his parents are like, we have no idea what he's going to get in this job, what he's going to do. And I just keep joking that their kid's going to be an HR director somewhere. And they thankfully have, they've got no debt for him, so they're kind of okay with it. They would be worried if he didn't. But the guy's like, we didn't raise our kid this way. We don't know what's happening. And what it is the kid is surrounding with other kids in school, and they have this expectations game. And the expectations game is making kids who get out of college pretty angry unless they're actually in the real degrees. If you're in the science degrees, you're in the – and by the way, I was poli-sci in history and went to law school. So again, I'm still paid on my student loans. But when you're getting the women and gender studies degree, or you're getting the relational science degree, or the sociology degree, or the art degree, getting a college degree is great. People with college degrees have lower unemployment than people who don't. But also, is your job going to get taken over by AI? The HR person, your job might. The architect, there are going to be aspects that get deployed to AI, but most of it's not. The accountant, AI is never going to be CPA certified, so good job. The engineer, same thing. The robots can build some stuff, but they lack the creative spirit that a lot of engineers have to have these days. But the HR person, I don't know about you. The regular bean counter, I don't know about you. You're going to have to start thinking about all these things. And then, of course, you tell the kids and they get freaked out about that and still think life's unfair. There are economic warning signs percolating right now that there's something going on with the economy where the growth rate is very good. A lot of people aren't feeling that growth rate. More layoffs are coming, and the kids just have these out-of-control expectations of what they're going to get right out of college. And parents, you may need to get involved and rein in your kids' expectations, because some of them are really thinking they're going to be able to walk into a $300,000 home out of college, and that ain't going to happen. Howdy, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. Glad to have you with me this afternoon. Kind of a wild card day here. I got to admit, today is actually a rather slow news day, and I have really struggled to fill the void, so to speak. And now I'm looking this weekend. We've got the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos tomorrow, and San Francisco 49ers and the Seahawks. And then on Sunday, we got the Texans versus the Patriots and the Rams versus the Bears on my front porch Sunday night. And then we get the Indiana-Miami game on Monday, and then we're all sad until we get to the Super Bowl, kind of, aren't we? We're almost at that time of year. We are going to so my daughter is going to University of Sussex. She's, as I mentioned, accounting and finance, and she is leaving Tuesday. And y'all you can get your laugh at this, having talked about not spoiling your kids and setting expectations for them. I set my expectations for my kid very, very good. That we would not be putting her in first class international. It's been a long time since I've done that. She's not going to do that. She needs to learn to sit in the back of the plane, and she needs to learn that when she gets out of college, she's not going to have her daddy's level of money. She's going to have to make her own way in the world, and that means flying in the back of the plane, not first class, unless I'm traveling with her. So I get her a ticket. I should have bought it through her Delta account instead of mine. I got her in the very back of the plane. I did. And then they kindly upgraded her to the third seat in the plane. It's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I actually, on her way home, actually went into her account and bought the ticket so that she couldn't be upgraded to first class because I want her to sit in the back of the plane. I want her to actually have that experience of this is how most people travel. And if you're going to start traveling back and forth to Europe and stuff, you need to understand that you're going to be doing it on your dime, not mine, and you're going to sit in the back of the plane. But on the way there, she calls me after she saw that I got this ticket and it got upgraded, and she calls me and she says, "Dad, thank you." And then she says, wait a second. I didn't realize that on international flights that the economy section is at the front of the plane. And I said, "What do you mean?" And because I didn't realize it first, she says, "I'm in seat 3A. I was like, "Do what?" They upgraded her. So at least she'll be able to get a good night's sleep on the way over there. But I got to just admit, you guys, I'm apprehensive. Like my motto is, I talk a good game with you people, but my real motto is why pray when I can worry? And oh my gosh, is there going to be war? What's going to happen? She's going to be in London, or she's actually not going to be in London. She'll be an hour south of London. I don't like my little girl going away for 5 months, but she is. I guess you got to let them grow up and get out of the house. At least our water bill and power bill will go down and our food bill for a few months. All right. Have a great weekend. I will see you guys on Monday.